so that I won't have to read everything. On your handout, the first page is, you can read that later. That was a little project, but it has some definitions there. A beautiful one is by Saadi, who was a 13th century Persian poet, and his poetry is in front of the United Nations Hall of Nations, and it says that as a human being, we're all like limbs of the same tree, and to truly be human, you have to be able to feel the pain of others. So what I did is I combined his words, and there's also a quote here from the Baha'i House of Justice, and also Reverend Noon from Korea. He said, "Our thinking must be that all people are our brothers and sisters. We must think of the world's problems as our own and have a pioneering spirit needed to resolve these. When we widen our perspective and live as global citizens, our national boundary will transcend our own country and come to embrace the world." So combining these number of ideas, I came up with this definition, and this will just be like a starting point for us for peace. World peace exists when all human beings recognize the whole of humanity as an extension of his or her own loving family, when each person feels others' pain as his or her own, and all invest in alleviating the suffering of others. So do you feel that's kind of inclusive? We're not kicking out anyone because they're communist or secular or this religion or that religion or Palestinian or Colombian. We include everybody in that definition. Okay, good. So we're just a starting point, and you know, when you have a goal, you're constantly cleaning it up and polishing it up, right? So my second one, I want to explain a little bit about peace building, because there are so many terms that have peace connected to it. Peacekeeping, peace enforcement, peace negotiation. But peace building is really long term. It's long term, and what it is going into the status quo, shaking it up and finding out what is causing the conflict. So the civil rights time, people could point to blacks and say, they're causing all the problem. They weren't causing the problem. That's a reaction to the prejudice and injustice that existed in the system. So peace building is going into the system and finding what is causing that. And peace building requires that everyone has a voice. I can say that one. So there's a definition I have, which I included in your handout about peace building, which will give a little bit more understanding, but I really don't want to take up too much time. So just to clarify peace building, okay? So now we get to the meat, which is arts. And everybody loves art, but when you get older, you kind of start thinking art is just, art, music is just for enjoyment, but do they really have anything substantial to contribute to society? I mean, we need politics and economy, right? That's what's going to move the world. So I have a quick question, if anyone can answer these two questions. Who said writers and artists are engineers of the human soul, and the production of souls is more important than the production of tanks? Anybody have an idea? Okay, how about what country has the largest art factory in the world today? Anybody have an idea?
Yeah.
Think outside the box? Okay, well, let's go on. Even though people in this country, or maybe rational, logical, and academia may not think art has really substantial contribution, but all the dictators in the world were very serious to control art.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
wow.
Hitler created a department to burn the books that were degenerative to the community, destroy the music, and to make sure that all the posters upheld the ideal of a super race, the Aryan race, the Nordic beauty, okay? And also music had to glorify war. And Stalin is the one who said that artists are the engineers of the soul.
Wow.
And so he wanted to control the soul, that to control the people's minds was more important than to build tanks. And he built an enormous amount of tanks. So you know that he was serious about that. So here we have this glorification of Stalin and Lenin. And then China, under Stalin, there became a social realism. It became the only official art form for visual art. So it always had to be idealistic. This is, even though this farmer looks well fed and healthy, there's millions of people starved to death in China. And then here are all the people holding up the book, everything, they're all healthy and strong. And then we have North Korea, which today has the largest art factory in the world, with 4,000 employees. And in 2012, they spent almost 50% of their total state budgetary expenditure for the economic development of Korea on art. And this art was monuments, sculptures and art like this to deify the Kim family. So it's really controlling the people. Mm-hmm. Now, in addition to this idealistic, beautiful images, they also caricaturize the enemy. So you have up here, if you can see it, that's a U.S. soldier, and these are little children killing him. Mm-hmm. Little children have more power than the U.S. soldier. So we can see that art does have enormous amount of power. And so all the things that it does for evil can also be directed to do for good. But the one thing about using arts for good is you cannot be manipulative when you're trying to move people in the direction of peace. You might have heard the phrase, there is no way to peace. Peace is the way. People attribute that to Gandhi. I haven't been able to zero it down, but that means that that if you're trying to build peace, then the message itself has to be authentic. All right, so if you're going to use art for that, the art itself and the music has to be authentic. So I'm going to give you 8 examples of different ways that art, which when I say art, I mean music, also dance, has been used to promote peace. And this country of Estonia is a tiny little Baltic country. It has over 1,000 little islands to it. And this huge space right here is Russia. So it was invaded many times by different countries, but something unique about Estonia is that it has even though it's so small, it has the world's largest collection of folk music. Music is really important in their culture. So after World War II, Russia occupied Estonia very brutally. And then even though Estonia had this tradition of singing, they would have hundreds of thousands of people come for days and sing in their native language, and even their choirs were over 1,000 people at a time on the stage. And then they would sing for days, really. And they had beautiful patriotic songs for independence. But when Russia took over, they said, you can't sing those songs anymore. You only have to sing songs that glorify Marx, Lenin, and Stalin. But in 1998, when Gorbachev implemented glasnost, which is more of a freedom of expression, Estonians chose their opportunity and began these huge festivals again. So you have these, can you tell? Can you see how many people are here? Wow. For 3 years they sang, I mean not consistently, but they just had festival after festival singing those patriotic songs. And it just united the people in such a powerful way. And the Russian army tried to stop it. How can you stop a group like this singing? It was their weapon of choice. And amazingly, they gained their independence in 1991 without anyone being killed, without any violence. So there was a beautiful documentary made, A Single Nation, A Million Voices, The Fall of an Empire. It's a beautiful story. So that's one example of the power of music to unite people. And the second example I want to use deals with, in 1984 there was a famine in Ethiopia and Eritrea, and pictures like this were on the news. And a man saw, actually a punk rocker, let's see if I can get his name, an Irish punk rocker and a Scottish-Irish punk rocker friend, and they created a song in England, and they created a song called Do They Know It's Christmas? And that raised money for the famine. Well, of course, America can't be outdone by England, right? So Harry Belafonte said, that's a great idea, let's do it here. So he contacted Lionel Richie and Michael Jackson and said, look, I want to do this song, and then we'll get other musicians to help us record it. So this is something you may not know. When Lionel Richie and Michael Jackson got together, they listened to the national anthems of different countries. And they said, let's create a world anthem. Now, do you recognize the words? You're so young, I don't know if you know this. We are the world, we are the ones to make a better place, so let's start giving. That song hit the radio. They made $46 million for famine relief, $46 million. And also the two punk rockers, I think I gave you their names, I'm not sure. Bob Geldorf and Midge Uri. Okay, they eventually created Live Band Aid, which made $140 million for different benefits before they closed in 1992. So this, so We Are the World, those lyrics, and also the way that they created it to be like an anthem, it mobilized, it gave people a of music. It can unite people and give them a vision, and also it gave them an avenue to direct their desire to fulfill that vision. We are the world. Let's do something about it. Okay, so then the next example that I want to use is also in Africa. Oh, look at that. Okay, so in South Africa. Now, this other We Are the World happened in 1985, but South Africa was suffering under apartheid, the separation of black, a very oppressive separation of black and white, from 1948 to 1998. And what happened is that the white ruling class, the white government, taxed the tribes people, and in order their pastoral land, they had no money, so they had to come into the cities to work in the mines in order to make the money to pay these taxes. So many of the Zulu tribesmen came in. They were separated from their families most of the year. They only saw them twice a year. They're working 6 days a week. Very oppressive situation, so different from what they're used to. So they could have turned to drink. They could have been despairing. They could have turned to violence. What did they turn to? Music. They formed a cappella men's choirs and sang in competitions every single week on their day off. Every single week. Well, they would meet a Saturday night at 10. Sometimes they'd go all the way through the night till church service. Then they would start their hard, Monday working again. Such a beautiful power of music. It created a camaraderie among the men. It created a sense of community. It kept their despair up. There's one man in particular. In 1960, Joseph Shambalala, he created a choir with his own brothers, and he began to receive dreams of this beautiful harmony. Am I speaking too fast?
No. You're doing good.
Right. So he created this dream. So this dream he had, he said, the harmony was so beautiful and so soothing. It was like being washed all over your body. He said, I want to share this message of peace with the world. But here he's a miner from the Zulu tribe in an oppressive state. What's he going to do? But his choir began to receive awards and became known all throughout South Africa. And Paul Simon heard about them and was able to get them out, and they traveled all over the world and sang this song that just melted people's hearts. And people were saying, South Africa, I thought, all the people were violent there. And but here if you hear the group sing, you go onto the radio and listen to them, and it really is like being washed with this beautiful harmony. And when Nelson Mandela, who you probably all know, was in prison for 27 years, when he was released, he said, Ladysmith Black Mambazo was the cultural ambassador for South Africa. And he had them play for him at his inauguration, and also they went with him to perform at the Nobel Peace Prize. And Paul Simon said, when Joseph Shambalala talks about peace and love in his songs, that's a political statement. So what a powerful expression for even to save their country. And there's another country that was saved by music. The tiny country of music and dance, the tiny country of Korea. Now some of you who may not be so anyway, when 9/11 happened, many Westerners did not know Afghanistan existed. We didn't know that much about Afghanistan, right? Well, the same thing was true for Korea after World War II. Korea had been occupied by Japan for almost 40 years. It was a totally devastated country. And then, so after World War II, when it was liberated from Japanese occupation, Russia took over the northern part, and the U.S. took over the southern part, only to rebuild the infrastructure. Because there was no hospitals, no roads, no buildings. Japan had just been brutal. But while the United States was naively building the roads and the hospitals, Russia was arming and training military. It was training the North Koreans to invade. So in 1950, before they could hand Korea back to the people to have a democratic election, the North invaded the South with Russia's help and weaponry. And so immediately the UN declared this unprovoked aggression, and 27 countries came to the aid of Korea. It's the first time in history. And but it should have. It's a long story that I can't go into. But eventually, China said, "Look, if you put one foot across the border, which you can see that there's." Oh, darn it! Okay, let me see. See right there. This is China. That's Korea right up there, right? So you put 1 foot across, and that's World War III. So America backed down. They made a truce. It was supposed to be a temporary truce. So in the meantime, do you all know what country this is right here? Anybody? Vietnam. So this happened in 1950, 1953. In the 1960s, we're already involved in Vietnam. How long are we going to continue wanting to support? We already left Vietnam. You know, people didn't want to keep fighting in Vietnam. How long would they continue helping Korea? So Reverend Moon had been liberated from a North Korean camp, communist camp, and he decided to create a children's folk ballet group, and that the children would go out and show that Korea was not just a poor country with orphans and absolute poverty, which is what all the Americans saw, but it was a country that had 5,000-year culture of incredible beauty and virtue. And the man who was in America taking these children around and all over, Colonel Park, he said that audiences would cry watching these children. They went out to meet the presidents, to be on Ed Sullivan's show, to go to the King and Queen. They went to like 67 different countries and performed almost 4,000 times. And they received a medal. Of course, it's not always the same because the children were from 8 years old to 15. It wasn't always the same children. It was constantly as they got older. But they were given a medal by the Korean government for being the cultural ambassador, for being the face of Korea to the rest of the world. And because when people saw, okay, this is a beautiful culture and these people want to maintain their culture, so we should protect them from communism. And that's why we still have troops there. So a lot of people believe that it was because of this folk ballet that we were continuing to support Korea. In addition, as you probably all know from the media, Kim Il-sung and his son and grandson are incredibly crazy, but Kim Il-sung allowed the Korean ballet to come and perform in North Korea. It was the first civilian group. So where political diplomacy could not, what they could not accomplish, cultural diplomacy did. So this is a tremendous achievement by children. Now those 4 examples were examples of kind of directly using art for the sake of peace building. But sometimes something come in a serendipitous way. You know, it wasn't intended exactly for peacemaking, but it ended up being used for peace. And I'm referring to, I forgot. I'm sorry, erase that, okay? Okay, so we went to Europe, we went to Africa, we went to Asia. This is America. Now, we already spoke about, 2 of our speakers spoke about the oppression of the Native Americans. And this is an amazing example. Jewel Praying Wolf James is from the Lumi tribe in Washington State. They have a tradition of carving totem poles to honor their ancestors. And he lost 2 of his teenage children to drunk drivers. It was, so to overcome his grief, he created a cooperative, the House of Tears Carvers, with other people who had also experienced grief. So they would carve and they would create memorials to their loved ones and just lose themselves in that art. So in the process of doing the art, they were being healed. But then on that fateful day of September 11th, 2001, over 300 Native American leaders were in Washington, D.C. for a meeting with the senator. And when the plane hit the Pentagon, the senator informed the Native Americans, please help be part of the solution, not the problem. So Jewel James went back to Washington, and he decided to create a totem pole for the Pentagon, not just for the families who lost their loved ones, but also the emergency workers. And the Lumi Nation donated money, and 70 volunteers came to help, not only from the Lumi Nation, but also many other Native American groups. And as they came, here they're carving and painting it, and as they're coming across, from Washington State to Washington, D.C., they stopped at almost 40 different places, and Native American groups prayed over it. So when I'm going to read you some of his quotes. He says, we know what pain and suffering is, but we also know how to put our arms around each other. The totem pole isn't a sacred thing. It's a sacredness of love joining us together. We have the power to heal, the power to love each other, the power to unite. That's what the symbol is about. And he said that the healing pole journey helped me to realize, to reflect upon the fact that I'm not the only person who is suffering. And I had to learn to heal myself if I was going to bring a healing message to others. So people come and visit. He also went on to make totem pole for Pennsylvania and New York. And it's not in New York City, but it's outside. And then he was invited to Israel and Palestine, and he promised to make a healing totem pole there too. So I hope you get a chance to see it, but even thinking about it and knowing that people who have suffered so much can still offer their compassion and empathy. And isn't that part of that definition of peace? You know, to feel another's pain. And so that's why I believe that this is a beautiful example of using the arts for healing, for peace building also. So what I was referring to earlier was, okay, these examples are all kind of more direct for healing and peace building, but the next one kind of happened accidentally. Now, rap music was created in the 70s in South Bronx, and first it was just in a party, an MC, a Jamaican-born Pool and Herb, I think his name was. But then it became kind of the ownership of the drug culture, and it became what's called the CNN of the black man. You know, so anything that was happening was going to be spoken about, since black people were not represented in the media. And a lot of things were glorified in what's called gangster rap. But actually there's, to my surprise, there's 6 different types of rap developed. And a lot of it is social conscious rap, so it's not just glorifying money and drugs and violence. And it's spread all over the world. Here are rap groups in all these different countries. Became like the language of the youth. And so part of peace building is that everyone has a voice. There can't be anyone who doesn't feel they have their situation hasn't been told. So the rap became, for instance, in Germany, a lot of Turkish people immigrated to work there, and their children are born in Germany. So they're not Turkish and they're not German, so they're caught in the middle. So there are these kind of German-Turkish, immigrant rap groups, and in other countries too, where people are caught in between cultures. And there's, of course, in Norway, there's some very well-loved rap groups. And there's a politician in Norway that said, we should take these rap songs seriously for the sake of the political process. So when you think about that, this became the voice for the voiceless, and now the politicians are saying, hey, let's listen. This is peace building, isn't it?
Yes.
So another, 2 last examples. So peace building is not just against violence or injustice, but also trauma, for instance, a disease. So the pandemic of AIDS. We have, the United Nations said that as of this year, there's 25 million orphans due to AIDS. Their definition of orphans are children who have lost 1 or 2 parents from AIDS. 25 million. And so back in 1985, there was an idea to create the Names Project. At that time, many funeral directors were even afraid to touch people's bodies. And so this project came about, and people created panels to represent their loved ones who had died from AIDS. And it helped to take a statistic and just a number, a vague number, and make it into real people that someone loved. And this is when it was shown in front of the White House. And since then, it was in 1987, it was 2,000 panels were displayed in D.C. Since then, it has been, 2005, it was declared an official American treasure. Received money for its protection, and there's a house to house it, and all. Now it's on internet. There's 1.1 million people living in the United States with AIDS. I think this is from last year's statistics. And 16% are unaware that they have it. So what's 16% of 1.1 million? I'm not sure. But okay, so this project is the only project of this kind where it's a kind of a community art project, and is constantly growing. And they use it to educate people about the scope of AIDS and also to raise money for medical treatment. However, there's one woman who saw it, and she said, well, I don't want to throw money for treatment. I want to stop it from happening. She did research, and she said 95% of AIDS is transmitted through sexual activity. So she decided to take her 3 children and their friends and educate them, and then have them use the arts to reach out to their peers. So they practiced breakdancing, they practiced skits, they practiced singing. They created all this way to use art because young people need to be approached more artistically through the arts in order to get the message. And then through that message, she said, if you wait to have sex, of course that's not what the name is Washington A's International Team, but also if you wait to have sex and you develop your talents and skills and abilities, and then when you do decide to have a partner, you stay with that partner for the rest of your life, whether you marry the person or not, then for sure you will not contract AIDS. It's 100% guaranteed if the other person doesn't have it. So the mission statement of WAIT is to stop the spread of HIV through factual education, creativity, and by modeling the good choices of abstinence, faithful lifetime partnership, getting tested, and using universal precautions to prevent blood contact. So WAIT has informed over 2,000 times in 25 different countries, and Kate Sabata said that all the young people become aware of how to make better choices in their daily activities, even though our media culture is promoting sex nonstop. Okay, so these examples are all. I gave you some information, some more information. There's some beautiful. I also gave you information about some documentaries out there. So we see from these examples that art has an incredible power to be used for peace building, and it is a natural. It naturally touches the hearts of people towards goodness. That's one of the reasons why people can be manipulated even to follow dictators, because they're being. It's a false message that's being used. So, so one thing that I found in my research for peace building, this is a world foremost Paul John Lederach, who has worked for 30 years in 25 different countries. And he said, the fundamental truth is who we have been, are, and will be emerges and shapes itself in context of relational interdependence. So what he's saying is that all the relationships are at the root of all social change. Relationships. And the reason why art is so powerful is because art helps build relationships and it reaches the heart. So the essence of peace building and the essence of art is relationships and heart. So I want to conclude this presentation with quotes from 4 people, 3 men and 1 woman. And I think I might have included them. But the Dalai Lama said, although attempting to bring about world peace through the internal transformation of individuals is difficult, it is the only way. Mm-hmm. So we can use art, and we can be nurtured by art, and we can respond to the art that builds bridges between different cultures. And Gandhi said, the law of love will work, regardless of whether we accept it or not, just like gravity. Mm-hmm. And Reverend Moon said, the answer lies in the hearts of men, in a quiet revolution from selfishness to unselfishness. And the last one, Dr. Hakshahan Moon, she said, today's problems cannot be solved by the logic of power. They can only be solved by the logic of love. Mm-hmm. Yes. So I go and thank you very much for your...
Thank you.
I might add that